Welcome back to Exquisitely Aligned. I'm your host, Gina Meyer Vincent, and you know we are here to celebrate men and women, and maybe in the future children, because we're doing a lot of work with students lately, but men and women who have made it through something. Let's say that. I like to say sometimes it's hell or hellish experiences and have come through the other side because, as you know, Exquisitely Aligned celebrates the inside journey, where you become your finest self, living your best life on your own terms and doing the things that you know you're here to do, which is usually making a bigger impact. And so today I am so delighted to have with me Malvina Messler, the quantum success coach, speaker, author, and Paris retreat host extraordinaire. Sorry, I can read. As a co-founder of a national franchise brand and a former vice president of 2 technology companies, which sounds like something I would never want to be around, coming from the fashion industry, technology is like, oh, totally different language for me. Malvina empowers women to unleash their inner CEO energy and design lives on their terms. She has done just that by embracing a global lifestyle, dividing her time between Colorado, California, and Paris, where she hosts her signature women's retreat. So welcome, Malvina. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Gina, thank you for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation. Conscious conversation, impact, and connection. What could be better?
Exactly. So I believe your website says you grew up in Poland. Is that correct? Have always loved world travel, growing up with first generation American on my dad's side, my mom's first generation on her dad's side, and we love to travel. So is that true?
Absolutely. So for those of you that were thinking it must be Eastern Texas accent, you were close, but you didn't quite hit it. It's Eastern Europe, Poland to be exact, and I actually grew up in Poland in times of communism. So it's been a long journey from living in a country where entrepreneurship wasn't even allowed, when reading books in English wasn't allowed, where MTV was forbidden, and certainly international travel. It's been quite a long journey to now being an American citizen as well as European, and being able to create life on my terms and live in multiple places.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. Having grown up in New York and then moved to North Carolina and now here in California, I can't even fathom what that would have been like. Can you give us a glimpse into, maybe some childhood memories, what that was? I mean, did it just feel natural because everybody around you lived the same way, or did you know and realize that there is more out there?
It's a very good question, because I feel like we always realize there is more, and there's this spark inside us, right? When I was growing up, the memories of my childhood are pretty gray. You see, if you know anything about communism, it is very dreary, really reality. And so I remember we didn't even have little things like chocolate candy. The only treat we had was a lollipop, like that fan or lollipop. That was it. So I remember that things like wearing T-shirts with Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck, we didn't have any of this. It was just really black and white kind of reality. And of course, lack of things in stores. So overall, of course, I had a happy childhood in terms of the love from my family and support, but the words like hope, possibility, they really only lived in dictionaries. I didn't really connect with them. And I think really it was something that we didn't even know it was available to us. And that's part of that being behind Iron Curtain. Why are we behind Iron Curtain? What's on the other side? And so the reality was pretty dreary, and that's why there were so many rules in place, because the moment you actually open your mind, you open your consciousness to seeing how other people live, what else is possible, built your appetite. And so the Communist Party guarded it very strongly, but it was, inevitable that one day we would open ourselves up to the world. And once that happened, including me, that desire and that hope and possibility actually connected with my soul and my heart. And I knew there is more out there.
So what age was that for you? You remember, like approximately?
Yeah, I was a child, when the communism was happening, I was a child. And then when my mom, when martial law actually happened, which was when for many years people were forbidden of leaving their houses and apartments after 10 p.m. You had to be in your house. Yes, there were lines to stores, and you actually couldn't even purchase things in a store, even if you had money, until you had a coupon, a voucher that allowed you to purchase it. So my mom already had me, and then she was pregnant with my brother. So she was trading the vouchers for milk and produce, and she was trading them for the vouchers that she had for cigarettes and alcohol, so she could feed her family. That's how, so everyone had equal, but there was nothing really, so no one had anything.
Yeah, and I mean, these are things I take for granted every single day. And, the fact that I could just grab my keys, get in my car, drive where I want, stay however long I want, buy, shop, don't shop, whatever I choose. That's incredible. So then when life changed, how old were you at that point?
So when I was in middle school, that's when we were finally allowed to study English, and I was taking English classes, which was just unthinkable. And capitalism came to Poland, and my parents were actually allowed to start a business. They actually they had this entrepreneurial spark in them, and my parents actually started the very first candy shop in the city. Yes, it was a revolution, and they thought they were for sure gonna get so rich of that. You know what happened? People were lining up. There were always lines outside the store, and they named the store Malvina, like my name, after me. People were lining up to the store, but not to purchase, because they didn't have the money. But literally they were going through the store like through a museum, because they've never seen chocolate bars, candy. It was a revolution.
Wow. Yeah, that's and it must have been a beautiful museum. Like when you think of candy, right? All the colors, the wrappers, they're designed for children. So that must have been, for somebody who's never experienced that must have been heavenly. So did the store end up staying in business, or did they have to close or change the product line?
Yeah, you would think. Actually, they didn't strike gold with that candy store, unfortunately. But they kept the entrepreneurial spirit, and they would then open a home appliance store. Wow. So there was a time where we didn't have color TVs, we didn't have washers, dryers. So they were traveling to Germany and buying all that equipment. And I remember they would go to Germany and bring bananas and oranges and bring them to us, to Poland, which we didn't have those. And my friends thought those were toys. So they didn't even know it was something to eat, because we literally didn't even have TV in terms of the global TV. We were only allowed to watch what was in behind Iron Curtain, which, so it was quite a culture shock. And I think that truly opened my eyes, because things dramatically changed. I will tell you, one person really changed the history of Poland. And it was a motivational speaker who came to Poland. I call him motivational speaker, but we all know him as Pope John Paul II. Yeah. And it's not a religious speech at all. However, what he did is in his sermon, under the umbrella of a religious event, he actually spoke. It was a motivational speech about hope, about possibility, about respect. And that really opened our minds and hearts. And there was one man who really connected with those words. His name was Lech Wałęsa. You may have heard of him. He actually decided, he was a simple electrician, didn't even go to college. And those words landed on him and he thought, I can be the change I'm seeking. Yeah. He started gathering other electricians and shipyard workers, and they demanded to have conversations with the Communistic Party, and they formed what we now know as Solidarity Movement.
Yes.
Which took it took over whole Europe, Eastern Bloc, other countries like Slovakia, Czech, Yugoslavia. They saw that the leading party was listening, and that really was the beginning of the fall of communism. And we know America stepped in and the Western countries. And so I saw how the power of the mind in that moment to really believe that we can do better, there is more for us, changed the history of Poland. And then this guy, imagine this, he became the first democratically elected president of Poland. No college education.
Wow.
And then he received a Nobel Peace Prize. So
wow. Yeah. And it's so true. I mean, there's so much, we could talk for a week about just that in general of, from teaching yoga for more than a decade, we talk about in yoga on the mat, the monkey mind and how it can spiral downward or how it can take you upward. And it's really up to us as individuals and then as communities and so forth, nations in the world to step into that place where we can vibrate at a different level where we can be that positive change. And those words do, if you're into quantum physics, vibrate at such high levels, much higher than fear and despair and all those other words that make us feel, for me, unhealthy, let's say. So then tell me, how did you, or when, and why, what is the story of leaving Poland? Because clearly you're not in the 3 different locations that you are nowadays. Poland was not one of them. So how did that take place?
That's right. So, once I got a taste of the power of the mindset and this different way of thinking, and then the borders opened and then, reality in Poland changed, I went to study philosophy, and that really expanded my horizons and my consciousness, as you can imagine. And so America clearly was just like this beacon of hope, of this possibility of anything is possible in this country. And I actually got one of my first jobs. I was very, very fortunate. Once, capitalism was already in full strength. I worked for this company called Dynamite, and I don't even know if they're still around, but they developed me as an instructor of speed reading, mnemotechniques, concentration focus. So I really got to tap into some of the neuroscience and really understand that we really just use a small fraction of our brain power. Right?
Sadly, but true. Yes.
Sadly.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was like the beginning. I was just like, oh my goodness, that opened my eyes. And I thought, what else is out there? And this company happened to be from America. So all the science behind it was in America. And I thought, oh my gosh, I gotta explore. So I was always gravitating towards that free thinking, entrepreneurial spirit, this dreamland that America was. And but I didn't really consider moving here. I just really wanted to come for the summertime. I applied for this work and travel program at the time, took some time from college. And when I came, I thought I'm going to just see the whole America. I'm going to work. And then my visa allowed me to explore for a couple months. Well, I was in for a surprise because, I saw the map, but it's just, you think like, oh, no problem. I'll just go from the West Coast. I'll hit the East Coast.
And America. Poland. Yeah.
And so I experienced this, and it was just a life-changing for me, just different way of looking at the world. And at that time, I felt Europe was, at least where I was coming from, very constrained, very limiting. And here I was in a country where you can reinvent yourself every day. You can start fresh. You can do anything you want. You can be anything you want. You can start any business. And there's such a profound network of support. And I just was hooked on that.
Well, I think what people don't often realize, unless they're having a conversation with you or they go abroad, is that we kind of, as Americans, take that for granted. I think that everybody knows an entrepreneur or solopreneur or two, or maybe it's them listening in, but it's not until you start speaking to other people. For instance, a friend of mine she's Australian, but lives in right outside of London, and her clients are entrepreneurs. 99.5% of her business is from Americans. And I said to her, now, wouldn't it be easier for you to work with people there in the UK even, right? It's your time zone, so forth and so on. And she said, no, they don't, if they become an entrepreneur, it's usually kind of like a hobby, not really a business, a corporation. It's really a little more small, the dream, than like what you're sharing here. And I think that as Americans, unless you're traveling abroad and seeing this for yourself or having these conversations with you now, Malvina, we don't always step back and go, yeah, we have so much at our fingertips. So the ability, and like you said, the support is really here with networking, with other businesses to help those entrepreneurs get off their feet or step to the next level and so forth. So I'm glad you brought that up. But what else were you going to say?
I love that you're bringing this up, because as we know, as coaches, that comfort zone is often the biggest enemy of our dreams and fulfilling upon those. I love what you shared about UK, because United Kingdom is so similar to America in so many aspects, and yet there is such a profound difference. I have a couple clients from South Africa, and they also share with me that networking is kind of non-existent there.
Right.
Something that's a standard for us. We have chambers of commerce, we have so many networking organizations, and so there's a lot that we can easily take for granted until we see other places. And I will tell you that 4th of July is a really important holiday for me, because, it took me actually probably 10 years to consciously decide to become a US citizen, even though I was already eligible for that, because to me, it wasn't just a matter of convenience or a paperwork. Right. I really wanted to feel that. And whenever 4th of July, Independence Day happens, I'm just really connecting with the land of the free and the possibility that's here. And this is truly the American spirit. And I know it sounds cliche, but coming from another country and from a formerly communistic country, it is truly a gift. It is truly a gift.
Yeah. My husband remembers becoming a U.S. citizen. It might have been end of elementary or beginning of middle school, because he was born outside of London and came here as a 3-4-year-old. And then, but it's funny. So yeah, it's an important time. It's an important decision. Our daughter became a U.S. citizen, I think, when she was it 4 or 5? It was exciting, for her birthday. It timed up with her birthday. So we did like everybody got a passport, a party passport and stuff. And, it was fun. Forgive me, my strap is sliding down my shoulder and feeling uncomfortable. Okay, back to reality. So then Tell us a little bit more. I think you said we spoke briefly, and I always like to keep it brief so that I get to meet you here in real time. And I know you had mentioned at one point you were in a marriage that wasn't so healthy, and I think we used the word toxic. So was that while you were here in the United States, or when did that come about?
Yes. So, after spending 6 months in the United States, that's when I met my future husband. And so we had a long distance relationship. And
Wow.
I remember I went back to Poland and eventually, it was such a big love that we wanted to be together. And at that time, it made more sense for me to come here than for him to move to Poland, not speaking the language.
Right.
So I remember I was literally at the flea market. I was, 22,
Mhm.
didn't have much money, didn't even own a car. All I had was my handbags and shoes and clothes. And trust me, those were not designer handbags. So I went to the flea market to literally sell whatever I had so I can afford a plane ticket
Wow.
to America. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I came, and the rest was a history. I
Yeah.
didn't even think I was moving at the time. We were still exploring it, but before we knew it, he said, you're not going back. We're starting a life here together. And so it was a beautiful adventure life. He
Yeah.
really embodied the adventure spirit of America to me.
Mhm.
He was in hospitality industry, so from the coaching space, I actually moved into hospitality, and we were blessed to actually travel across America, and we would work for resorts in Aspen and
Yeah.
Alaska and San Juan Islands and Hawaii. So it was beautiful. But what I didn't realize on that journey was that the relationship I had was very unhealthy
Mm.
and was very codependent. And at that time, I didn't know better. But
Mm.
now, looking at the hindsight, it became a psychologically abusive marriage. And I remember one day when we moved to Hawaii, and I was in paradise, right? So you would think
Yeah.
20-something-year-old coming from Poland, she just this is a golden ticket, right? But we weren't there that long. We haven't established, friendships, and I didn't have my support system besides my husband. And
Sure.
another thing happened, and another fight to the point that he threw me out of the house, and I was left without
Yeah.
keys, without phone, wallet, and in the evening. So I walked to the beach, didn't know what to do, and I just slept on the beach. And at that moment
Oh my
in
gosh.
time, yeah, it wasn't pretty, and I didn't even consider the potential danger of being
Yeah.
a woman sleeping on a beach, because the
Right.
danger at home was just so real
Yeah.
that when I was going to sleep, tears rolling down my cheeks, I promised myself, this is it, no more. This ends here. I'm gonna go home, pack my bags, and I'm gonna start fresh.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, when I went home the next day, it was time to go to work for my shift. And before
Okay.
I know it, because I couldn't afford to quit my job, before I know it, not only I'm not packing my bags, but I'm finding excuses for the behavior. And I stayed 4 more years.
4 more years. Did you say 4 more years?
I sure did.
Wow. Yeah.
Um,
I can't
and
even, I mean, I'm grateful. I've never been in that situation, but just listening, right? And feeling into what would it be like to sleep on the beach alone. And I love the beach. Don't get me wrong. The beach, and especially we just came back from Hawaii before the fires in Maui, right before the fires. And I just can't even imagine being able to fall asleep. I'd have been with one eye open, just wondering every single sound, because it's so open. You're so exposed. You're
mm,
so, available to be possibly taken advantage of, hurt, whatever. I don't know. But I'm thankful you were safe that night. But to go back to that for 4 years, to me, I'm getting exhaustion. I mean, can you describe and nervousness? I mean, were you fright? Yeah, were you nervous? Were you intimidated at that time?
At that time, what I didn't know is, when and for some of the listeners or viewers, you might have had your own stories. Mine is not that different. I mean, we all go through things. But at that time, what I didn't know is I didn't understand my nervous system. I didn't understand that I was in the survival mode, that I was in the fight or flight. Yeah. And I really wasn't equipped to make decisions that would serve my higher self.
Sure.
I was so much in that fear that, I forgave myself for that. And, and I also took responsibility for the codependency that was created and lasted this long. But that's what really informed me to then study the neuroscience, study the brain, study the psychology. And now one of the things I really specialize in is neuroscience of change. Because for me, I made that conscious decision to leave, and yet I didn't. And I didn't for 4 years. So every day I had a chance and I didn't. And so what's behind it? And there's so much behind it. I mean, I truly created, that was my normal. My nervous system thought that was the safe place when there were constant fights and arguments, and that overwhelm, like you said, it was exhausting. I was so exhausted. I didn't even have it in me to, to come up with solution to the problem I had. Right. And now I know that there are so many people. I have compassion for myself and for others who go through this, because looking outside, we say, come on, this is black and white. It doesn't serve you.
But it's not when you're inside. Right. And I think that's a very important point to make, because it's very easy on the outside to say, why is she still with him? Or why is he still with her? Depending on what's going on. And I think that you explaining it just the way you did, giving it a voice, that it's not that easy when you're on the inside. And we've heard this before. Juliet was just on giving that a voice, of what it was like for her. And, I think also sometimes we feel vulnerable, right? To tell somebody else, hey, this is what's going on in my home. You don't want to, others, maybe you don't, not you personally, Malvina, but we don't want somebody else to know that we're exhausted, we're in a toxic relationship, where, I was going to say, kind of taking things that we shouldn't have to take, you know what I mean, but
100%.
To be honest, I think it's good. Yeah, go ahead.
You said, actually, I will agree with you. I was one of those women. I was so ashamed. The shame was devastating, because I consider myself a smart, intelligent woman. Definitely capable. I mean, I moved to America without my family and all of those things. So how was I stuck in that situation, in this marriage? I just, it depleted my sense of self-worth, to be honest with you. My confidence went down the drain. And I will say that it became a vicious cycle. And my parents didn't even know what I was going through. No one.
Well, I was gonna ask, did anyone in your inner circle of family and friends know? So thank you for, it's probably not something you want to pick up the phone and say, hey, by the way, I had to sleep on the beach a week ago, and not by choice,
Right. And I think that was really part of why it lasted so long, because I wasn't seeking help, because I was so ashamed of this. And oftentimes, that's why I actually took my story and put it on paper, even though I've healed that since, it's been 12 years since I've been divorced. But I thought, you know what, it's not just for me, it's for other women to hear that. And there was a pivotal moment in this journey when what I realized was I was really abandoning myself.
Exactly.
I had my Catholic guilt, and I know you know this about
Mm-hmm.
the self-abandonment from the work you do with women. But, I grew up Catholic, so that's part of that cultural programming and conditioning. And mine was for good and for bad, right? You
Mm-hmm.
just stay. And I was so determined to be the good person. And I also had my savior identity
Mm-hmm.
that for as long as he had issues, as I saw it, and there
Yeah.
were problems, I could exercise my savior identity, or at least I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was trying to save him. Well, the truth is, there was no chance for me to save him because I
No.
was so deeply, no, I had no power in saving myself. So how could I save him?
Right.
And so eventually I realized, that what my mom said to me once, and she didn't even know the extent of the situation. And she said, you just need to love yourself more.
Yes.
Right? That just, and you know what? When she said it at first, I had resistance to it because when she said it, I thought, oh, she wants me to be selfish. She wants me to be self-absorbent. She wants me to be, egotistic. So at
Mm-hmm.
first I had a resistance to it because I was a kind person. But then I sat with it and I sat with that and it just wouldn't leave me. And I thought to myself, can she possibly be right? We never want to admit that our mom is right. And I
Right.
thought, oh my gosh, what if she knew the extent of this? And I thought to myself, I think she's absolutely right. I literally didn't love myself enough. I loved him
Right.
so much. And I wanted to stand for him and for our marriage. But in that nurturing our marriage, nurturing my ex-husband, I
Yeah.
stopped nurturing myself.
Yeah. And I think that happens often, and it doesn't even have to be in a toxic relationship. What I found with clients for 20 years now is that oftentimes people think they're being nice. And I usually say, I'll call her Nora just to give somebody a name, right? And Nora believes, like you said, if I'm taking care of so much myself, then I'm being selfish instead of, hey, I'm filling my cup. I'm loving me so that my cup overflows with love. And then I can love my husband, my kids, my dog, my cat, my neighbor, my parent, whatever the deal is. And I think that Nora ends up being, she's always been nice. She's the one people come to. She's always there helping, always giving, giving, giving of her heart, of her time, of her energy, maybe even her money. And there comes a point where she feels depleted and maybe even angry at the others who she's given to. And that's not even in a toxic relationship, right? Then when you add toxicity and codependency, this takes it up, in my opinion, by 1,000 or 2,000 fold of what's going on. And I think that oftentimes it's the women, sometimes men, but more often maybe women, who give up those pieces of themselves to care for, and be the doting wife or the doting mother, whatever the situation. So I know you're not alone. I'm glad there was that pivotal moment, and I'm glad, you heard what your mom said and that it went through a few different times, because sometimes when somebody says something, we think, oh, that's not for me, or, oh, it must mean this. And like you said, you're like, I'm a kind person. I'm not a selfish person. Why would I? So forth. So how did you manage, I mean, I'm guessing, but I don't know, that it was probably not the easiest thing to walk or get away from. So how were you able to leave that relationship?
The truth is that I know he knew exactly what he was putting me through and through
Wow.
our relationship. And when there are factors like alcoholism, like gambling and other addictions, then it becomes really it's so much more advanced. And I think
Yes.
he really didn't put up much of the fight
Thank
because
goodness.
the truth was he had a choice to choose himself and a healthy way of being, because there was a path for him as well. And so I don't think he gave up just on our marriage and on me. I think it was more on himself too.
Absolutely.
And so it was the moment I was divorcing him, I was fully in love with him. He was still the love of my life. To this day, I only send him love and kind thoughts, and I wish him well. And I developed myself as a trauma coach as well. So I also have compassion for different things. And at the same time, we can be compassionate and we can hold people accountable. We don't have to put ourselves through things that don't serve us and that are unhealthy for us. So I started rebuilding myself. But the first thing on my journey was I couldn't really restore my power and reclaim my happiness until I removed myself from that environment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And the moment I did, it wasn't easy, but universe has its ways. And when we really desire something, I know on a quantum side, that when we put that desire out there, just the universe conspires to align the things for us. And I remember when I got divorced, not only I was an immigrant, so even the building up the credit score was also something of a new thing for me, because in Europe we didn't have a thing like credit score back then. So, and imagine when you're married to someone who's gambling, there are financial problems.
Oh, wow.
My credit score went downhill because of that, because we were a marriage, so a unit. So I was facing not only leaving the divorce with not any assets, but rather debt that was allocated to my name. So I had to pay the debt off. Then I had to rebuild my life. We just moved to Denver, Colorado. I was new to that community at the time. And I wanted to, rebuild my finances and myself in a process. And you know what? Within, I think it was 18 months or 20 months, I was a homeowner. I was able to rebuild my credit. I was so committed and had seeked out guidance from experts and was able to do that, changed my career, got into franchising back then, got into business, and really was able to start I would say it was almost like excavating myself in a process. It took many years, but I just forgot who I was, because as you mentioned, I gave piece of myself away every single time I put up with things, and I didn't speak up for myself. And so it took some time I call it the journey of unbecoming, or of taking off the layers that were in me, and coming back to who I was. And that led me to the path that I'm on, because that personal development journey allowed me to really equip myself with tools that I thought, gosh, what if I shared those tools with other people, just like you're doing? I mean, this cannot go in vain. And so couldn't be happier to have gotten to the place where, through the power of self-love, I was able to increase my sense of self-worth, which allowed me to now make an impact on other women, just like you're doing, and really be of service to others. So I'm really fortunate.
Yeah, and we're fortunate that you've done the work. I mean, for me, I like to say that if we are like Nora, playing nice and giving up pieces of ourselves, or I like to think of Rachel as the rebel. Rachel's going against what, society, our one size fits all world, has told us we should be, or who we should be, or even our spouse, right? And neither one of those is a healthy way of living, because after time, being nice all the time gets exhausting. It's depleting. Being a rebel all the time, you're constantly on guard, ready to fight something. And then I like to say Fran may have been nice. Then she became a teenager. She became a rebel. Then she went back to being nice because she got this new job and got married. Then she got divorced or quit her job. And now she's the rebel again. Her kids are out of the house, and it's this like back and forth. And I believe I've seen it so many times. It's just so exhausting. And I've heard people tell me they needed to reinvent themselves, which I am totally against, because I believe the truth is we were born this way. We were born the way you sit across from me right now, Malvina, as your authentic, truest version of yourself, which I call exquisitely aligned. So for me, it's always about realigning. If we've given away pieces of ourselves, it's reclaiming them back. And it's not always easy. So I'm glad you were able to find methods and tools and maybe some people along the way. And now you share it with others the same way as I do, because, you know, for me being a New Yorker, that's my accent, New Yorker by birth. Yeah, I can't get rid of it. But, you know, I can't sit back and watch someone remain stagnant or stifled or being held in a place. Like you were saying, like 4 years to me is like, oh, 4 years. You know, at first I thought you said months, but I was jotting notes. I always like to take notes so that I could use them for the, you know, for the show notes. But I was like, I think she said years, you know, and that to me, of course, had I known you back then, I would have been, hey, Malvina, come here. We need to talk a little bit.
I wish you were there. I wish I had you in my life.
Listen to your mother, you know, or let me repeat it with a New York accent. Maybe you'll listen to me and we'll give you your mom credit afterwards, you know. But yeah, it happens often, and it's so fabulous to see you on the other side and see you glowing and know that you're out there helping change women. And I'm sure there's a few smart men that work with you as well, changing their lives and making an impact, because I believe that's why we're here. And I believe those hardships, for me, I've had a lot of twists and turns, so much so that I've had people say to me, why do these things happen to you? And I'm like, you know what? It makes for great podcast television episodes, you know, and it makes for great being able to relate and connect with other people, right? If we've experienced a snippet of what someone is talking about, we can like, oh yeah, I know a little bit about what that feels like. But kudos to you for making it to the other side. I know you have a new book. So if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about that, Malvina?
Absolutely. And so this story is part of the book Becoming You that I co-authored with several women who have equally powerful stories of really journey back to themselves. And I really love what you said about realignment. It really stuck with me, because I believe that what we can be, we must be.
Yes, absolutely.
And that goes to your principle that, you know, we've all been born with a message, with a purpose, with a reason to be here. And a lot of times we're in our own way. So I often tell people that the way I see it is just like, you know, I will share a little story about Michelangelo. He's a famous sculptor. We all know him so well. And he carved those beautiful angels. And his student said, Master, how do you carve this delicate angel out of this heavy stone, marble and granite, but they look so delicate? And Michelangelo said, well, that's easy. I just chip away what's not angelic.
Yes.
And that's the process I feel, you know, I went through, because the truth is we've all always been who our highest selves, and we just let life pile on. So in this book, that's the story that I share, and what I realized is it took me many years, as you know, to really truly remember who I was. So now I'm really committed to sharing the steps I took with women, and hopefully the next woman who's sitting where I was sitting in that toxic marriage, or it could be the job that doesn't serve
Correct.
her.
I was just going to say toxic career. Yes.
Or environment, maybe the place you live in doesn't support you, the community. So it doesn't have to be the marriage.
Culture. It could be, I mean, absolutely. It could be a family, you know, your extended family that just has beliefs that are limiting you. Yeah. No, you're
and any dynamic that stifles you, doesn't support you, and you want to go through that change. I share the steps in a book which I took, and now I actually teach women those steps in a much quicker way. Now you don't have to go through 4 years before you before you exit. And in fact, part of the things I do is because for me the journey, I call it the journey of self-love, and because I had to shift the most damaging belief that I had, which was that self-love was selfish. But to your point, if we don't fill our cup first, then there's nothing to give to others.
Exactly.
So just like we board the plane and they say in case
oxygen.
of emergency, put your oxygen mask first before assisting others. So that's a powerful framework. And now I actually take women on the journey to the city of love, which is Paris, because what a better place to fall in love with yourself, if not in the city of love. And that's what I did for myself as a crowning moment. So it's very special to me.
Oh, I love that. That's wonderful. And for those of you who are ready to get the book or connect with Malvina, all of her information is here below in the show notes. So that please feel free to connect. And I love all of that. And I think that when we are able to share our stories here with me today, in your book, on your website, in your social media, wherever we share on stage, we give permission to others, to other women and men, even children, to be able to share themselves. I think everybody has a story. We've had several authors on lately. We'll have another one back because we only got to speak about 2 out of our 7 books. But, the thing is, when we are able to be transparent and vulnerable and raise our hand and say, I need help, or Mom, what you just said to me really, or not just, but what you said to me XYZ months ago or weeks ago really stuck with me. I'm ready. I need help, or even if it's a friend. We've heard many stories where Deborah Wondercheck was just recently on, and she was talking about her mom was able to escape with 4 out of the 7 children when the oldest 3 were away at college. And so she knew it was her time because she had only 4 to get out of, the other 3 were safe. And how she did that journey and how many other women helped her. It was almost like an underground railroad of how they got these mom and 4 kids out and moved around enough to get them out of state. Well, first out of the city, out of the state, and so far away that they were good. And there's always help, and there's always people like Malvina. Please reach out. And I feel like trauma is not something, or toxicity, whatever the word that you feel suits you or makes sense today. It's nothing to be ashamed about. So many people can relate, whether it was they themselves, their sibling, their parent, their child. It's that close. It's really, I know we say 6 degrees of separation, or at least that was the saying when I was a kid. Now I feel like it's a half degree of separation, right? With podcasting and meeting people around the world and travel and the internet. I don't think there are 6 degrees. I think that we are each have stories that are very much similar. And so Malvina, I am grateful that you shared so freely and transparently today as you did, of the times that were not so comfortable and how beautifully comfortable they are for you today. I appreciate that.
Gina, thank you for creating such a safe space to have this conversation. I love the mission you're on and the stand you take for every woman to have her voice and be able to share it and live their best lives. Because we are all worthy. We were born worthy, and we all need someone like you. I wish I had you when I was going through this, because I felt so alone and misunderstood.
Yes.
And so the point is, let's reach out for help. Let's connect, because your Gina is only, a phone call away, right?
Yes. And being alone and misunderstood is a feeling many people have. And it doesn't have to be in a marriage. Sometimes it's just in the world. I've always seen, I shared this story recently, so I won't go into it, but I love wearing rose-colored glasses. And that's the way I was born. I still see things that way. I don't watch the news. I don't read the newspaper. I only bring in things to my home that fill me up, like fresh cut flowers, art, so forth. And I don't let the news in here except for when my parents are visiting and have to stay connected to the news. I try not to sit. I try to, it just, from an energy level, it makes me twitch. But we don't see eye to eye on should we watch the news or not. The healthy benefits of not watching the news is still a conversation that I am not winning with my parents. So at any rate, everybody's allowed to have their own opinion. But we can feel alone even by just seeing the world a different way. I always see the beauty in the world. I did a whole season of the art of creating beauty. And, beauty is something I desire in conversations, in relationships, in my home, in where I spend my time. When I look at my plate, I desire beauty. My husband will be like, "Oh, here we go." Oh gosh, this is not going to meet her standards. Not that he's cooking, but if we go out somewhere, it's like, wait, that's not, you could have made it prettier, And those things bring me such joy. And because of that, there were so many times that I remember feeling alone and misunderstood because the people around me didn't always see things the way I did. And I think we could probably spend another episode speaking about alone and misunderstood. So I'll leave it at that because it is time for me to let you go. But before I let you go, I'd love to pull a card from the Opening to Possibilities deck. These were designed by me with the intention of allowing people to use them either as journal prompts, contemplation, or meditation, or conversation starters. So as you can imagine, I've always loved meeting people from around the world. And my family knows that I've always had really deep conversations with strangers. What they call strangers, I call them my new best friend. So Malvina, as my new best friend, I'm going to thumb through the deck, and then I'm going to ask you just to say stop whenever you feel. So I'll start now.
Stop.
Advice. Oh, this is perfect. Advice. I think you've given great advice just here today, and then I know in your book as well. Advice is abundant, even in unexpected places. So there are 3 questions you can answer, 1, 2, or all 3. How do you discern How do you discern which advice to act on? Has someone else's advice changed your life? I know your mom. See how these cards, always the right one comes out. So I'm answering your questions for you with what you've already told me. I apologize, but give us another one. And what is your favorite piece of advice to give?
Well, I think, yes, number 2 was answered by my mom's advice. I will also say that I used to be I say that I had an advice seeker syndrome. I was looking for answers outside of myself. And my biggest advice for anyone listening and watching is tune out the noise. Just like Gina said, whether it's TV, whether it's other people, and come back to yourself, because the best advice for you that anyone can give you is you. Yes. So take time to be still, however that looks like for you, and tune in. And you will know, we all have speak different languages of intuition. For some of us, we will see the sign, other times we'll hear it, or we'll have deep knowing. Right. And trust it. And that is going to be the best advice, because no one knows you as well as you know yourself. No one has the journey that you're on. Mm-hmm. So you're your own best advice giver.
Yes, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. That's exactly what we do here. So thank you again, Malvina. You've been such a delight. What was a chance meeting at a networking, well, maybe not chance, maybe it was fate, right? A quick hello at a networking meeting has become a lovely conversation that I hope continues moving forward. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Gina. I absolutely want to order the cards, and I want to know more about your art of creating beauty, because that spoke to me. I'm like, you got me going. So,
well, we definitely can talk about that. That's for sure. That is something I am very passionate about, have been passionate about from a young age. And I'll give you just a quick snippet. I remember like so vividly, my mother, I think she was very concerned, like, I'm the oldest of three. My sister is 4.5 years younger. My brother is 6 years younger than her. So almost 11 years younger than me. And I remember her, because I always loved the finest of whatever, whether it be jewelry, clothing, shoes, it's no wonder I went into the fashion industry, right? But, I just always, I liked nice places. I liked fine hotels and fine china and crystal. And, I could see my mother, I think maybe, and I never even asked her, she does listen to the show. So Mom, this question's for you. give me a call after I ask. But I never got to ask her. I think I felt that she thought I was attracted to money. And I couldn't give you those words when I was a teenager, right? But now that I'm an adult and like you have done so much soul work for myself, I have looked back and I just have this, I personally desire beauty. For me, it's not superficial, it's super fuel. And so when I am in a place like today, having a conversation with you, Malvina, that is deep, transparent, and inspiring, that to me is beautiful. And it fuels me to go on for the rest of my day. And so, beauty for me is I just always have loved artwork. My father does beautiful art. We have some of his art. We have my deceased father-in-law's art, which is very different than my dad's. My daughter is an artist. And so I value those things, but we can definitely speak more about that. But that also made me feel at times alone, because I saw that others didn't value that the way I did. And were like, oh, this place is fine. I'm like, no, the atmosphere is not right. I don't want to eat lunch here. I want to, hey, I see someplace else. I feel the energy. I want to be there. So we could definitely speak about all those things, plus worthiness, because we only tapped on a little bit of it. So you'll definitely have to come back so we can discuss that. But I'd like to offer, for those of you who have listened in and found some places where you were nodding your head, like being able to reconnect with your truths, and just tell you about a 2-hour transformation that has been proven so highly successful that we just put it out to the press. It's gotten a lot of pickup here in the United States and in the United Emirates. For Purpose, Possibilities, and Prosecco, a 2-hour transformation like no other. It is a private session shared between myself and Sabine Kaiser, a very talented and knowledgeable face reader, that she will be able to gaze into your face, bring you back to that purpose in life, and then you get to speak with myself as well for that journey where we were talking about the mind may have some let's say, no, you can't do that kind of moments, or that's a little bigger than I think I'm worth. So love to have you for that. You'll find the information below. Until next time, be exquisite.